People are making huge mistakes with their LinkedIn profiles and leaving money on the table. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or an employee. If you don't understand the power of copywriting, you're missing out. Fortunately, today's guest has your back.
Today's guest is an ex-rapper turned teacher turned marketer. Through his company, Hey Jay, Jasmin Alić helps businesses with brand strategy and copywriting, including brands like Microsoft, Digicel, and Marriott Bonvoy. And if that wasn't enough, he's one of the fastest growing creators and experts on LinkedIn, where he shows up daily and treats it as a stage. And most importantly, he's a father, which shapes so much of what he does and how he does it. Welcome, Jay. Such a pleasure to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you for that beautiful intro, especially the father part. I feel like let's turn this into a fatherhood podcast. Forget LinkedIn. I can just talk about that.
Hey,
Podcast on that topic. So we just might.
probably we can. I have 2 small kids. Mike has 3. So I think we probably could make an episode of that. That's great.
And how old is your son, right? Or is your daughter?
4 years.
4. Okay. And it is the son, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Mine are 5 and 3. So you're right in the middle of my 2 kids.
There we go. You know what I'm going through right now.
Exactly. Let's get started. Can you kind of share with us your journey into entrepreneurship and how you actually find yourself, becoming a creator on LinkedIn and crossing this 200,000 milestone recently?
Well, technically I started 15 years ago, but long story short, I was a rapper for like 5-6 years. I still can't remember whether it's 5 or 6. I know I did 6 albums back then, but it was somewhere around those numbers, 5 or 6 years. I was also a teacher, travel the world teaching, and then my passion was writing. All throughout that period, even throughout the rapping days, throughout the teaching days, I was still getting like contractual work, blogs, articles online, doing some website copy here and there. And when I decided to just quit education as a business, as a career, I didn't want to pursue it anymore. I went full on into online marketing, writing, copywriting, all that. And fast forward a couple of years, I worked with some big brands, really proved myself on platforms like Upwork. Upwork is like, the number one platform in the world for freelancers. Became a top 1% freelancer. That's what they say. Like they have this whole little niche group of vetted experts. That's what they call it. And I was just watching my peers grow, man. I was just watching a whole lot of folks have this presence on social media, and I didn't. And I was like, wait a second, why do I have all this experience, at that point, 10 plus years, and I'm not doing anything? Like, no one knows me other than, the little Upwork bubble, other than the, client bubble, the referrals and the recommendations that I'm getting. No one knows me. And I'm like, I could probably be doing a whole lot more. So LinkedIn was the number one choice. LinkedIn was the obvious platform to turn to. I tried first year, failed, quit the entire year. I tried again next year, failed again. And then in 2022, just two something years ago, I was just like, you know what? I don't care what it takes. I don't care how many hours I have to spend on this freaking platform, just engaging with people, connecting, writing. I don't care how long I have to kill myself to prove that I can do this. And that's what happened. I was spending like 4, 5, 6 hours per day on LinkedIn, just connecting with others, just commenting left and right, writing content, studying folks, like what's the deal, what works, what doesn't, until at some point I started sharing some of the things that worked for me, because I felt like, hey, I'm spending all this time on the platform. I probably noticed some things that a whole lot of people don't. And the first time I shared a LinkedIn tip style post, people went crazy. They're like, oh my God, this actually works. Thank you, Jay. Like, do you have any more tips like these? And I'm like, not yet, right? I had to wait for like a week or 2 until I found the next thing that I was sort of like, okay, this might work. Let me share this with the people. And I did. And from that point on, I guess I kind of split my focus between copywriting and LinkedIn growth. And now it's turned into this whole thing with LinkedIn writing / branding / coaching. I'm running a coaching business. We're growing so fast, booking out months in advance. It's crazy, man. Traveling the world, just keynotes after keynotes, it's crazy. And to think it all just started after, this one silly thought where I'm like, you know what? Everyone's doing it. Why can't I try it? All of my peers are just moving ahead, spearheading the game. I'm like, I can do that. So that's the long story short. I feel like that was a pretty long story, not a short one.
No, or I have a couple questions. What made you decide your teaching days were over and you wanted to move out of that?
So I was in Saudi Arabia at that point. This was 2015. And my school there was going through this U.S. accreditation process. Essentially, they get accredited. The students can, they have a higher chance of getting admitted to a U.S. university. So the accreditation team that came over, I really made friends with the accreditation team. We sat down, we were talking, and this was just after I had received this award over there for my work as a teacher. I received an international award. And I was just having a conversation with them, and the question, so where do you go from here? Like, what's the next stage? Where do you go? And I'm like, well, you tell me, guys, like, what else is out there? Because you got more experience than I do. You're probably just, scouring and auditing all these schools out there, all these universities. Like, where can I go? Like, what have you seen that actually works? And the conversation was like, nah, man, it's pretty much the same out there. Like, nothing's changing. Like, the education system, like, we are also fighting with this trend of no reforms, no changes, not a whole lot of things are getting modernized. So I was actually thinking, and I looked back a couple of years, through my experience of where I had worked. I'm like, that's actually true. Like, nothing has changed. The only person that's actually moving the needle is me. I'm trying something new with the students. I'm actually going against school policies and what they're telling me to do. And I'm like, forget that. Students don't like that. Let me try something else. And it would have been the same year after year after year. So I just decided, you know what? Whenever someone asks me that question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I actually want to answer something, because I don't just want to say in the same freaking place. And that's the reason why I just realized, I would be stuck in the same exact place 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I spoke to so many other peers at that point as well. And they all confirmed my doubts. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my youth and my talent. Let me go, focus on the online gigs part. And it worked out. So
nice. What's interesting is you left, in many ways, what you could say is teaching education to become a teacher and educator because you do that.
Yeah, I still drag the teacher with me. Yeah, pretty much. I teach in my content. I teach all my clients. And we just call it coaching now. So
you're right.
Pretty much. Yeah. So I don't even know if I can say that I actually rebranded ever. It's pretty much still the same gig. It's just a different location,
That's so funny. You mentioned something else too, and I think now your growth you're at nearly 215,000. I think last time I checked. You probably stopped counting now on
after 100K, it's all the same. I said that in a podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and the moderator was like, really? I thought it would be different, 100K, 200K. I'm like, nope, nothing's different. It's just more people, and pretty much from like what you do during the day, everything is the same. Once you cross that, 6-figure mark, it's like just more people, more traffic, more people, more traffic. But like what you do and how many hours you actually can devote during the day, like you're limited. You're only human, right? I can't respond to, 1,000 comments every single day. I can't, even though I do get them. I can't humanly, it's impossible. I managed to respond to maybe 200, 250. That was the same case when I was getting 500 comments. I was actually responding to all 250. So there were 0 unreplied ones. But now I still reply to only 250 and I get 1,000. I get 2,000 comments. It's like, I can only do so much, right? But yeah, from an authority standpoint, it's definitely different. That part, for sure, different.
And especially again, LinkedIn. I mean, that's like anybody listening not familiar. I mean, LinkedIn, even hitting 100 grand is like, it's pretty rare compared to other platforms and stuff like that people have. That said, you did mention
for sure. On that note, by the way, sorry, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, I used to say this a couple of years ago, and I still stand by this thought. If you compare Instagram or TikTok or any of these popular platforms compared to LinkedIn, which is a business social media platform, I always say if you hit 100,000 followers on LinkedIn, is the equivalent of 1 million followers on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah,
that's the difference. I feel like genuinely, like the way people perceive you, 1 million followers on LinkedIn, 1 million followers on Instagram, equivalent to 100K on LinkedIn. That's sort of the difference. That's just my sort of point of view.
Well, and you don't see a lot of those 20, 30 million followers on LinkedIn as you do on Instagram and TikTok. It's just a different Different audience, different use cases, different needs.
Yeah, because not a whole lot of people on LinkedIn are actually active. Some of the stats are so Richard Vanderblom, a huge LinkedIn expert, he does these algorithm reports every year. They study the trends. They study all the things that happen on LinkedIn. They got a huge data pool, right? So I think the latest algorithm report showed that only around 1% of people, 1% of users on LinkedIn actually publish posts weekly. So one post per week, 1% of users. And then 2-3 posts per week, that's even less than 1% of the active user base. So which just tells you, it's crazy out there. Like there's so many users, but people are mostly consumers. They're not creators, which is not the case on TikTok or on Instagram, right?
Well, it's ironic because doesn't that actually represent society as a whole too?
Pretty much, because everyone can snap a photo, right, and post it.
Yeah.
Not everyone can actually give you a real legit business insight.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned something about how, obviously now, because in the very beginning, you're like, you said you're going to give it your all. What made you decide that you were all in on making LinkedIn work? And was there anything that really clicked for you that you really did differently at that point that you didn't do in your other attempts prior to it?
It was envy and pettiness. I'll be completely honest. I was petty and envious of a whole lot of peers that were doing it. And I'm like, I read those posts and I'm like, my grandma could have written that. And here I'm just looking at a post that's getting 500 likes, right? Reactions. And then 2 days later, that same person posts, and with actual proof and screenshots, DMs and all that, it's like, hey, this particular post that got me 500 likes, it brought me a 5K client. And I'm like, I can beat that, right? I got to do better. I know I can do better. So it was pure envy and pettiness. So I was like, if they can do it, I can for sure do it. And that just kind of pushed me. But I kept it positive. I was like, I'm going to be a positive spirit on LinkedIn. I'm not going to tell anyone that that's the actual reason, but that was the actual reason that pushed me. This was 2020 back then when I first decided to publish on LinkedIn.
What motivates you today?
Today, honestly, just the fact that we're helping people. I read about this a lot on LinkedIn, and it took me a while to realize. So we often get caught up in all these metrics, right? Likes, comments, reshares, how many followers you have, what's your view count, how many views you're getting. And it's very easy to actually fall into that trap of just chasing those numbers, chasing that high, right? And then if you go viral even once, it's, again, so easy to fall into that trap again, like chasing that next viral post and then the next one. But I feel like after a while, you just realize, wait a second. I received so many DMs from people. I received so many comments. I actually had so many clients, and they all said that the content is helpful. They are making money based on the content. They are changing their own lives, therefore the lives of their families and everyone who follows, right? And I'm like, at a certain point, the more my following grew, the more those metrics grew, I was like, the more people we are actually impacting. So for me, what drives me today, genuinely, is that we're impacting people's lives. I'm not even kidding. It's like, I don't have to post on LinkedIn. I want to post on LinkedIn. I have other ways of, getting clientele. I can just show up and publish a post once a week, and it's going to be enough. But I choose to do it more frequently. I don't have to spend hours and hours every single day. I don't have to. No one has to. Just commenting and engaging with others, building this community. But I want to. It's beautiful. And I notice the impact we're having on people's, lives, livelihoods, businesses, all that. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Sorry, one more question I have to ask you too. I'm curious because you mentioned now you're limited on the amount of time you have to be able to respond to all these, which I think for a period of time there, you were able to, and then you hit, whatever it is, 100,000 or even before that, where it just started becoming unattainable. What's the secret for anybody who wants to get you to respond on there? Is there is it a timing? Is it a type of response they get? Is it talking smack about Luke? Like, what's going to get the job done?
Oh yeah, shout out to Luke Matthews. The secret to me responding is actually either be early on the post, because I have this, it's very unique to my profile. I don't think anyone, there's probably only a handful of people who actually have folks waiting on their posts on LinkedIn, like literally waiting until you post, and then they're the first to comment. They're right there, right? Getting all all the sauce, all the value from the first commenters, which is to me the true value of community. That's the meaning of community. People are already there, right? You're just the reason why they're there. They're not necessarily there to see you. They're there to hang out with each other. They're there to talk to each other. They're there to, just hang out in the comments, see what other people are writing as well. So for me, it was like, if you're early and I can actually see your comment at that point, because I have this rule of staying 100%, staying for the first hour, sometimes 90 minutes, and I will try to respond to as many comments as I can. So if you're among the first commenters, you can be 99% certain I will respond to your comment. Anything after those first 90 minutes is debatable. It's really debatable, because then I just, log into LinkedIn maybe, a couple of hours later for like 10, 15 minutes, and then a couple of hours later for another 10, 15 minutes. And then in the evening, I mostly just handle my DMs and my emails. So if you're first, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to respond and other people will respond as well. And it's sort of become this, it's a catch-22, right? Do you want to comment only if you're first, or if you see Jasmin post in the wild after 4 or 5 hours, is it even worth commenting? I say yes, just because there's always more people. Every single post is getting 1,000 plus comments, sometimes 2,000 plus comments. It's crazy, man. But what I've noticed is that it's an actual community out there. Under each and every one of those posts, I don't even have to be there. I genuinely don't have to be there. People are talking to each other. Like, I'm just the driver of everything.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm not the reason. I'm just driving the force, and everyone else is having fun. So it's just beautiful to see the community coming together.
That's great. Well, maybe in the future, as you scale, is there a time where your son starts replying with emojis to people?
I'll hire him as a VA, pro bono.
My 6-year-old, if he gets a hold of my phone, he just loves texting people emojis or whatever it was.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be very random gibberish language. Yeah, for sure.
Jay, so, compared to 2022, when you kind of made that decision and then you went full force ahead, to now, what's the style of copywriting that's changed? And like for today, 2024, what are your top 3 recommendations somebody should do?
So in terms of writing on LinkedIn, I have this unique perspective that as long as you know psychological principles of writing, you don't necessarily have to follow too much of the algorithmical stuff. Because if you know how to talk to people, if you understand in its essence what writing actually is, because writing is technically just psychology in text, you have to understand the effect a text has on a person even before they start reading. The topic is formatting, so visual aesthetics of text. And I always say all text, all copy is visual. This is, I teach copywriting at the university, so this is one of the biggest lessons I also teach to my students. I always say all copy is visual. You have to understand, if you look at a giant slab of text, it's just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, the likelihood of everyone reading that post, and I do truly mean everyone who scrolls by it and sees it in their feed, right? The likelihood of everyone reading those slabs of text is very low, super low. Like, no one wants to read huge chunks of text because it's not attractive. Nothing is more emphasized, than the other thing, like the first part, second part. Where do I look? Where do I start? But if you truly focus on giving it some white space, we call it white space, but it's actual like empty lines, breathing room. If you focus on shorter lines, if you focus on actual structure and visually guiding the reader from the top to the bottom of your posts, that's when things get different. One of my biggest tips is always pay attention to the formatting, because the information matters, right? What you say really matters, but how you say it sometimes matters even more. Because if people are not attracted to it before they even start reading, plain and simple, they're not going to read it. So formatting really matters.
There's an art, as I've seen that, and as I've seen the approach that you've taken with yours, and you can't help it. Like, your eyes want to follow it as they go through those posts.
I take it to the next level. I just love playing around with it. Yeah, for sure. You don't need to do that, by the way, if you're listening or watching. You don't need to overdo it. I try. I love doing it. Just people just expect it from me at this point. But yeah, it's fun.
I enjoy it. It's amazing, and it's just one other reason to look forward to, some of those posts. But to me, it does make it actually easier to read as well. I know I've attempted a few times when people ask for some advice on their LinkedIn, post that they're going to do, and I'll go through and I'll be like, I'll try to write that bit. But for some people, it's the concept, that's not how they're, taught and learned, but they're not seeing, back to what you said, this, even the psychology of some of it too. Because when people can see something and it feels like, obviously the psychology of the words itself and how it moves people, but there's the other piece about moving people towards action, because it does like tell the brain for whatever reason, oh, this is a quick read. Like when, depending on how you're doing the, I'm trying to think what you call that when they, ascending or descending order.
Staircase at this point.
Yeah.
Would you say that during your rapping career, the writing during that period kind of followed the same type of
for sure
approach that you had?
And I love that question, just because I often talk about rhythm in writing. I give this example a lot in my workshops and the keynotes that I do. Whenever I'm doing these writing trainings, I have my own storytelling framework that I've developed. 13 years, took me 13 years to work on something and actually now give it to people, and they can use it across platforms. Really cool stuff. But one of the things I mentioned in there is structure of text. So how you actually guide the reader from the top of your post, or from that first line to the end of your post. Like, what is the best structure? The answer is there is no best structure. You just have to figure out what actually makes people tick. So me being a music head, hip hop head, I think in rhyme schematics. So for me, the rhythm that sort of stuck was 1-3-1 or 1-2-1. So if you look at a whole lot of my posts, probably 95, I would dare to say 99% of my posts follow the same look visually. It's one line and then 3 lines, and then 1 line and then 3 lines. The reason why is the human brain responds to rhythm. And this is all happening in the subconscious of the brain. Just think about all the music and the top music charts right now. Like the top songs, they all sound pretty similar, right? If you take a look at the 10 songs in the charts right now, the comment is, yeah, all music these days sounds the same. All music these days, it sounds the same, man. Like, it's trash. No, we've actually been saying that same thing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Every single time you look at the charts, you can actually say, oh yeah, all music these days sounds the same. The reason why is repetition. There is an actual rhythm at play that gets people going. And depending on the trends of music, right, people just fall into the next trend and then the next trend. But the thing is, when it's easy to listen to, when it's easy to follow from like that first verse into the chorus, and the second verse and the chorus, it just glides, man. Your brain doesn't even consider it a chore to listen to a song like that. If it plays on the radio, you're just like, yeah, let me listen to it. Why? Because it's easy. So I apply the same principle to my writing. I know that repetition has a subconscious effect on the brain. So 1-3, 1-3, 1-3. Your brain, as it's looking, reading from the left to the right, it just glides from the top to bottom. Your eyes just do it. You don't even realize you're doing it until you actually get to the bottom of the post and you're like, oh yeah, this was such an easy read. But there's actually a different principle there, which is about restarting people's attention. So breaking that pattern sometimes has a much better effect than actually just doing the pattern in the first place. So if I'm doing 1-3, 1-3, 1-7, all of a sudden you actually stop and you focus on the list of 7 things. But you want to know why? That's the same effect of the chorus in a song. So the verses, they're pretty lean, right? You just follow, and then the chorus is like there's a drop. That drop is a break in the pattern, because it restarts your attention, and the hook of the song, the chorus of the song, sounds so much more important. Like, all of your attention is focused on the chorus of the song. You can actually use that same principle in your writing, where if you do have a pattern, 1-3, 1-3, 1-3, 1, you just break the pattern. Just drop in a 7, drop in a 10, drop in a 2, whatever. But if you break the pattern, your eyes notice it, and your eyes stay on that part a little bit longer, just a tad bit longer. But this is, how I, for example, if I'm context setting, like in the first part of the post, if I'm telling you a story and I'm leaning into it, and then I really want to give you a huge set of tips, like a 1, 2, 3 step-by-step strategy, then that strategy is going to be without the pattern. It's going to have like 7 steps, 10 steps, 17. But I know as you're reading, you're going to focus on that part the most, just because it's the same principle in music. The verses are what follows the repetitive rhythm, and the chorus is what restarts the attention, and you start a new pattern. Anyhow, I feel like for the people listening, I may sound like a crazy man.
No,
like a
that's
madman.
fascinating. No, that is fascinating.
But it's just, psychological effects on the human brain. Like, you just got to think about it. Like, when you see text and when you read text, those are two different actions.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Register the visual, right? And then we start reading the actual information.
There's this episode on Netflix. I forget what show it was part of, but the episode title is called The Stockholm Syndrome. And it's about why the Swedish music producers have been so successful in the US especially. And it talked exactly about this and how they just were able to figure out the simplicity of the music and the repetition. And they were analyzing ABBA and, from there to Ace of Base and a bunch of stuff. I was like mind blown because they were so similar. It was just subtle changes. So it definitely resonates with me. It's exactly that. It's fascinating.
Right now, I think like the latest trend in music is reggaeton. So, South American music, Brazil, Mexico, there's Bad Bunny, and then all of them, right? They, like, all the music kind of sounds similar, but it's like the melody of the voices is what they're actually using to kind of make it different. But if the underlying rhythm of the song, the BPM, the speed of this,
it's all the same.
More or less the same. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I didn't even think about it.
Michael's just listening. He's like,
like the mind-blown emojis coming out.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I'm curious then too, because obviously, arguably, like, just hearing you talk about that, the psychology piece that you said, but also just this training around, as a musician, as a lyricist, however you want to say it. It's like those are key advantages that you have. If somebody was, or they've shaped, your style and your approach. If somebody was starting anew in copywriting today, would you tell them, okay, first drop some raps? No, like, what would you drop a beat? Like, how would you tell?
That's actually good advice.
Okay, maybe it is. So I'm curious, if you said 3 things you should do starting now to be a better copywriter, what would you say?
If you want to start copywriting today or learning about copywriting today, focus on clarity. I feel like a lot of people on social media, especially folks in business, they focus on this idea of uniqueness. Oh, I want to be the most unique person in my industry, in my niche. And that is an easy trap to fall into. You don't necessarily have to be super, uber, mega unique to be good. Just think about it. There's so many smartphone brands out there. Sure, Apple might be the king of the hill, but there's so many others still surviving. There's still Fortune 500 companies, right? You don't necessarily have to be uber unique to be good and successful. And that is one of the things I also say to people in, writing copy. You don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to be clear and concise at what you do. You have to tell people exactly what you do in a language that they will understand. So clarity, that clarity piece is crucial. Clarity does not necessarily mean unique, right? Because the more you write, the more you're going to fall into your own personality. And this is step number 2. How do you be authentic on social media? I feel like we just overcomplicated what authentic means. What's the phrase? Be yourself. Sure, Jay, how do I be myself, right? How do you speak in the real world? Like, are there some phrases that you say a whole lot? Like, for example, I say, whoop, a whole lot. I do the same in my content. I kid you not. I do the same in my posts. I do the same in my comments with people. I do the same in my DMs. Just don't try to fake it. If there's a certain word, a certain descriptor, a certain adjective that you're using a whole lot, I use very a whole lot, and I'm not afraid. Every single copywriter out there will probably tell you, stop using very, it's weak. I'm like, no, it's unique, because everyone's avoiding it. Why shouldn't I say it? It's the way normal people talk. Obviously, overdoing it, in just doing 10 times very good, very this, very, it's like you can say excellent in at least one of those examples, right? But don't overcomplicate who you are. That's step number 2 for sure. Just lean into your uniqueness, lean into your personality. However you speak in the real world, write like that, write just like that, right? The key is do not think, just do. That's a quote from Top Gun, the movie came out last year. You know, the last one with Maverick, Top Gun.
Yeah.
There was a quote in that movie and it really resonated with me. He said to the little dude, he was like, "Don't think, just do." And I'm like, that's literally the advice I give to people. Don't think, just do. Which brings me to how you actually start to write. So a whole lot of people and a whole lot of research supports this. Marketing research, just data on social media. People spend, so if you take into account the total number of minutes, so the total time of writing one post, people spend an average of 50% of their time only working on the hook, the first line of their posts, which to me makes total sense because people oftentimes do not know how to start their posts and they're sitting there overthinking it. They start it, they delete it. They start it, they delete it. Meanwhile, I'm like, wait a second. Why don't you just write what you want to say? Like, just don't think, just do. Just write down what's the main thing you want to communicate in this post. This is like a huge exercise that I do in my workshops. When I'm teaching people how to write hooks, I tell them, do not think. If I ask you this next question, just give me the first answer that's on your mind. For example, what is a topic you want to talk about on LinkedIn? And they're like, lead generation. I'm like, okay. Is there like a really specific thing in lead generation that a whole lot of people are doing wrong? And they're like, yeah, cold outreach. And I'm like, well, what are they doing wrong? And they're like, you're sending too many cold DMs in a day. And I'm like, well, if you could tell people one thing from that particular post, what would it be? Stop sending so many freaking cold DMs. And I'm like, that's your hook. That's your hook right there. Stop sending so many freaking DMs. If you had a YouTube short, video, an Instagram reel that literally just grabs your attention with that first line, that's the hook. Stop sending so many freaking cold DMs. And then you jump into it. You've already grabbed their attention because, again, you didn't think, you just did it. Do not overcomplicate writing. The key here is really all three of these are clarity. You're clear on what you want to communicate, you're clear on who you are, and you're clear on what you want them to understand and do, your audience. So clarity, huge lesson. I always say to people, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Copywriting is all about clarity. And clarity drives action. Because if people are unclear about what you told them, about what they read from you, they're not going to know what to do next. And this was a huge lesson. I have to mention this. This was a huge lesson with a lot of my big clients, so a lot of the Fortune 500s. Whenever we're working on these bigger campaigns, right, it's typically for millions of people at once. So if you're doing a billboard campaign and that one slogan, that one billboard text is going to get shown to hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people, you have to take into account, how many different demographics are in there, how many different ages are in there. Like, how are they all going to possibly understand what you're telling them, right? Because if you want to talk to the grandmas and grandpas of the world, you can't use Gen Z language like lit, right? You can't say it's lit. What is lit? Where are the candles? They're not going to know. They're not going to know. Plain and simple as that. But if you want to speak to a larger demographic, if you want to attract more people onto your content, do not focus on sounding clever. Focus on sounding clear. I will always say this. In a battle of clear versus clever, clear takes the win. Not 8 times out of 10, not 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. And yes, before someone says it in the comments, there is a way to be clear and clever, both at the same time. But it does take practice. For like an average person just starting out in copywriting, I always say focus on clarity, then work on how you can interact, right, with the cleverness of your brain and how you can incorporate it while still sounding very, very clear, especially to your target audience. Clarity, main lesson for everybody, especially in branding. Again, a whole lot of people try to over-communicate what they do, oversell it. Just tell people what it is, man. Like, don't overcomplicate it.
And I was going to ask actually that when it comes to these brands and that you worked with, because what you just alluded to, I assumed something they're challenged with, especially because some of them, strive to hit various different markets. In fact, sometimes they'll create sub-brands to hit these other markets. How do you approach that with a client, like to actually make sure you understand and help them to get to that point of clarity? Because it feels difficult.
Yeah, the key with these bigger brands is they invest a whole lot into market research. So sometimes I'll get like a 50-page, 60-page slide deck with so many freaking data points, with so many things that they're analyzing, like from certain demographics. And then they're probably going to have like different demographics for the same campaign. And we're probably going to launch, especially in digital channels, like there's a way of targeting a certain demographic on all these platforms. Like you can set it up so that it is only served right to a specific type of demographic. But in these out-of-home campaigns, like billboards and like in the media and the newspapers, then you have to understand like, for example, if we're talking about billboards, one of the bigger things I've learned from, for example, Digicel, is they are very keen on knowing where they're going to place it, whether it's on a kiosk, whether it's on a billboard, whether it's in the newspapers. And then you have to understand, like, who's actually living there in that particular area where we are renting out the space for that billboard. Who are the people living nearby that particular kiosk, right? Is it an airport? This is the copy we need. Is it near a school? Is it near a bakery? Like in a urban area? We need a different set of copy. So they have huge data points on their markets. Market research just through the roof. So me knowing that, I have to understand all of it. First, I have to be clear on who I'm talking to. And then I have to really simply, sometimes, I hate saying this, but sometimes it's like, I have to say go goodbye to my creativity in certain, campaigns, just because the downside could be huge, but the upside could also be huge if you communicate it clearly. So let's say you're doing a Christmas campaign. Let's say you're doing, a back to school campaign. You're going to be talking to millions of people. So you can't really risk saying something really clever where you're risking a whole lot of people not understanding what exactly you mean. Where it's one of those things like, gosh, I can't share like copy that we've written. I'm trying to think of something on the fly. I'm drinking coffee right here, right? If this is Nescafe, let's say, right? I can say, coffee is bliss, clarity is bliss, whatever. Bliss Cafe with you every morning. And I'm like, what is Bliss Cafe? Is that a new brand? Right? Because no one knows. It was because you tried to play around with the words. You were too clever, not too clear. But if you simply just say, Nescafe, bliss in a cup with every single drop. Okay, we're getting closer, right? And then so on and so forth. We do all these variations with, where we have a clever version, where we have a semi-clever version, where we have a fully clear version, where we're not even trying to be clever. We're just trying to be super clear. And then if that sounds bland, we go a few steps back, right? We try to somehow give you this punch, right? Punchy copy, but we also never risk with cleverness, ever. It's very hard, especially in bigger markets.
Well, I think we'll cut that clip and send it to Nescafe and see if they want to, pick that up as their listening. I actually like it. I'm like, I'm not a drinker of that, but maybe I should try it.
That would be good for my portfolio, because Nescafe is the only coffee I drink. Hello,
There
coffee.
you go.
First, I know you're going to come at me saying that Nescafe is coffee, but Nescafe is coffee to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When you were going through that exercise, all I can think about was Mad Men, and the show, and how I feel like that, and maybe that's my perception, but that show really popularized copywriting, especially in the advertising era in 50s and 60s. I'm curious if you were the fan or watched the show.
Oh yeah, I watched Mad Men. I fell in love with it, and then when Suits came out, Suits was actually a spinoff of Mad Men. It was just a legal drama, not an advertising drama. I fell in love with Suits, and I just wrote a post yesterday. One of my most unique, most useless skills that I possess is being able to quote all 9 seasons of the show Suits. I've actually watched it. You can ask some of my friends, you can ask some of the buddies that hang out with me. It's kind of scary, because sometimes they might ask me, like, hey, continue this quote. And I'm like, the quote doesn't start like that. And they're like, the thing with me was, I didn't have a whole lot of time, to watch TV, just to sit down and just watch something for 2 hours. But every single time I have a meal, I'll turn on, like for 30 minutes, like I'll turn on Suits. And that's how ever since college, ever since my university days, with every meal, I was watching Suits. And then as soon as, every season had run out, I'm like, let's go from the beginning. Season 1, episode 1. I do this to this day. It's like, I never get tired of it. You always catch a new phrase. You always catch a new thing. I love Suits, man. I'm not obsessed.
I actually haven't watched that one yet. I've been interested in it. Now you sold me on it. I'll go all in.
It's a great
So,
show for sure.
yeah.
If you enjoyed Mad Men, you're gonna enjoy Suits. It's you know, they started off as a spinoff, but then they do get into their own lane for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it. I'm curious, as you look at LinkedIn today, are there big changes you're seeing, or you think, nah, LinkedIn same as it always been?
Well, see, that's the thing. Me as a creator and a coach on LinkedIn, I feel like I have to keep my finger on the pulse on all the things, like even the tiniest little changes in the algorithm or whatever. But I feel like ultimately, if you just hit the basic pillars on the head, you're going to be good. Like you're going to be safe from all the changes. Number one, have a clear profile. Clear profile is the start to everything. And I always say this, you can have the most viral posts, right? You can have 10,000 likes per post every single day, 7 days a week. And you're going to have a whole lot of traffic to your profile. But if the people visiting your profile are not taking action, meaning you're not speaking to your particular target audience, or even if you are, you're not communicating what your unique value proposition is for them, they're not going to know what to do. They're not going to send you a DM. They're not going to go, visit that Calendly link to book you. They're not going to pay you. And I know because half of the clients that I have on LinkedIn, the coaching clients, are people who've probably been on LinkedIn much longer than I have, and people who have much larger followings than I do. So the question is always, Jay, I'm not making any money on LinkedIn. And I take one look at the profile and I'm like, I think I know why. I think I know the reason. And then we start the entire process, coaching, repositioning, everything. And it's not sometimes even just what you say on the profile. Sometimes it's your offer. Like you can be clear on what you offer, but sometimes the offer is just weak in and of itself, right? One of the cool things I learned from a good buddy of mine, Jacob Peggs, on LinkedIn is a whole lot of times people will focus on selling you the dream. And in that dream, they're trying to solve all the problems that you have as a business owner, which is great, right? You're like, there's so many unique value propositions that I have with this offer, just because this offer is probably fixing 10 problems for you. But when you really think about it, the way humans make decisions is not based on all the problems that they have. It's based on one burning problem that they have at the moment. And then once that burning problem is solved, are all the other 9 bonuses? Cool. But the trick is you want to solve one burning problem first. Huge problem for a company, for a business owner. And a lot of the times they know exactly what that problem is. You just have to find that particular niche audience with that particular niche problem. That's when your positioning becomes infinitely stronger, infinitely more powerful, because you're not solving 10 problems at once and neither one of them is like the standout one. You're solving one problem for one particular audience. So then on your profile, it's very easy to optimize it. You're going to have crystal clear messaging. You're going to have a crystal clear audience who you're speaking to, and you're going to have a crystal clear course of action for them because you know exactly what you need to do and what they need to do. So do not try to fix 10 burning problems. Fix the one that's burning the most. That's what I would say. On LinkedIn, that's like, the key to really great and powerful positioning.
I love that you say it, and I'm also anticipating here the future book from you called Clarity, because everything seems to go back to this clarity. And but I love it because it's something that we all, I think, struggle with a lot because of how our minds work and many directions they want to run and how they want to cover everything instead of just saying what's this one thing. But because you talked about it in, when it comes to the LinkedIn, when it comes to branding, I mean, a lot of it when you clarify this too, like business in general, and I think probably in people's lives. And in fact, when I look at someone like you and again, be inspired by your post, because I do know, work-life balance is this, or whatever term we want to use to call it, integration, anything else. But for you, what's key for you, or what you at least reinforce, is making sure that your son is a priority. And to me, that's another version of clarity. Like for you, like this is it. This is life. Everything else supports this, unless I've, picking up anything the wrong way. But that's another example of that clarity. And I'm curious, how do you approach that and find that balance? Because it's something a lot of people struggle with. And maybe it is. The answer is clarity, because you know so clearly.
I so appreciate this question, Michael. There's a saying in Bosnia, at least a saying that older people in my circles have told me when I was a kid. It says, not every buck is yours. Meaning, not every client that comes your way, you should service them. You should accept every job that comes your way. Also, you shouldn't be focused on making so much money. If you're making money enough to take care of your family, to buy a new house, to buy a freaking new car, to give it to charity, to help others, and still save up, that's more than enough. And that is something that I've grown up with, meaning if I have all of that monetarily taken care of, all of the things that I just listed, if I have all of that taken care of, I don't need more. I genuinely don't need more. I would much rather spend time with my family, spend time being a father, because I know time flies, right? I know I'm never going to get back the time that I have with my son. So I focus on genuinely having my life priorities first and then the work priorities. With me, it's never work-life balance, to your point. It's life-work. So I try to, focus on the family part first, and then the schedule comes afterwards. That is truly the reason why I work very early in the day and very late in the evening, just because I want to spend my days with the family. And when, they're asleep or whoever is asleep, I'm going to go do some meetings. I'm going to go get up early. I'm going to, get some work done. And whenever the kids are awake, let's go. Let's have some fun. So, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. You can't pay for your time back. You just can't.
I can attest for that. I can't believe my son is going to be almost 6. It just feels like time flew by.
For sure, man. For sure.
12-year-old, almost teen. It's like, what the heck? Yeah. I know we're coming towards the end here, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to take a moment to drop a freestyle rap where you take down your arch enemies, Laura Acosta and Luke Matthews.
No, I could shout them out. I could shout out a whole lot of creators on LinkedIn. Obviously, Luke Matthews and Laura Acosta, good buddies of mine. But there's so many other creators, man, who've inspired me along the way and who inspire me daily. Like, I don't pretend I know everything on LinkedIn. I'll say it to my clients, like, I don't know. I'll often refer them to other coaches who, like, for example, if they come to me and they're like, I specifically want to get better at DMs and sales. I'm like, go to Richard Moore. Here's his link, right? If they want, I don't know, if they want to write with AI, for example, right? I'm like, I'm not the AI guy. Go to Luke Matthews. He's got a course for that, right? If they want algorithmic insights and everything around, social selling, I'm like, go to Richard Vanderblom, right? If you want, there's so many other people who inspire me on social media, especially on LinkedIn. I don't mind giving them a shout out. I don't mind sharing the pie. It's like, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at a lot of things, and a lot of my clients are very grateful for that. But if they just want like one very specific thing and I know I can't service them, I'll just forward them to somebody else. And I think that's the key to good business, especially long term. You have to have a network of people. And they do the same thing to me. If they're like, hey, Jay, she doesn't just want, I don't know, AI. She wants all the things. And I'm like, thank you for sending it through, So that's kind of like how it works, like over time. And to think about the real origin story of a lot of these relationships, it's like, you just left a freaking comment on a random person's post. That's how all of this started, man. Scrolling LinkedIn, you saw this blonde bearded dude like Luke Matthews. I'm roasting him for him. Yeah. But, and he's like talking about, oh yeah, I take cold plunges at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm living in Costa Rica. And I'm like, who is this dude? And then the next line is like, I'm running a 6-figure ghostwriting business. I'm like, okay, we're getting serious. And then, you see that he's actually legit. He's for real. And, you just start to get along with people. You kind of find your tribe. You find the people you vibe with. You find, good people to learn from. And, at this point, I know exactly, what I'm doing in my business. Like, I've coached so many people at this point, man. It's like, it's in the hundreds. If we're talking workshops that I've done over the world, it's well over, several thousand people that have attended my workshops in person. Online, geez, like all the webinars that I've done, it's 100,000, maybe even close to 1 million people that I've educated, and I don't even know it. I'm not even aware of it. It's like the business is good. We're booking out months in advance. People actually have to wait for the coaching, which is a good problem to have. And I'm just now launching my community as well, my private exclusive community. So, things are just coming full circle. I feel like I've gone into this, just trying to impact people's lives, and I haven't realized that they've actually impacted mine a whole lot. So here we are, we're just doing it next level.
That's great. I feel like we can go on for a long time with you, Jay, because the conversation is so amazing. But I think we got to wrap this up. So if, leave a comment, ask Jay a question, ask us a question. And Laura and Luke, who Jay mentioned, we also have episodes with them. So check out their episodes too and see what they said about each other, because that might be a little fun, roasting.
And Jay was a lot kinder than they were. Just saying, Jay, your last chance. You don't want to put anything out there, right?
I don't want to roast anybody, man. I'm known as the kind guy only.
He's on brand. Jay's staying on brand.
They're private DMs, man.
He has clarity. Okay, Jay, how can people find you?
So go to my LinkedIn profile, easiest way. You can go to heyjay.com. That's hey-j.com. That's my website. You'll find a whole lot of resources, materials, contact pages, this and that. And or join my community. So there we go.
I'm curious here, what platform is your community going to be built on, or do you have that worked out yet?
I have to publish that probably next week, so I still can't say that.
Yeah,
it's going to be good. Either way, it's going to be good.
Yep, no doubt. You're king of community, what we've seen you build out and stuff like that, just again. So love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks again. And we'll see everybody in the next one. Thank you.